Okay, hi, and welcome to the Engineers HVAC podcast. I'm Tony Mormino, and your host for today's special live episode on LinkedIn and our YouTube channel as well. I hope we're coming through okay. I hope you can hear us, and thank you so much for joining us today. So this is what we call a breaking news episode. So breaking HVAC news, right? And what we're going to talk about today are three different topics. One is the AHR Expo, which is coming up here in a few days. The other topic I was going to talk about is this great article by AHR News about how long should your equipment last. And I actually did a post on that and got a lot of feedback, and I'll share my personal experience with that, and I'll share the professional survey that they did in that article. And then I'm going to talk about something that kind of surprised me. Hey, Teddy. Teddy Gorham, thank you for joining us. I'm going to talk to us about something that kind of surprised me, which is, we did this post yesterday on this problem, which is behind me, which I thought was going to be a very easy, here's the problem, here's the solution. And turned out to be a couple hours of work on my part to make sure I got my facts right. So anyway, I'll share that with you too, which I think was real insightful for me. And one of the things I've learned when I do anything online, even though I've been around for a lot of years, I always learn something new. So for those of you who engage and comment and get out there and do that, we really appreciate it. So streaming this live on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Thanks again for watching. If you're listening on our podcast platform in the future, you can watch this video on our YouTube channel, which is at HVAC-TV. Okay, so topic number one. AHR Expo is coming up in sunny, warm Chicago. That's supposed to be a joke. It's obviously going to be very cold there, and I'm actually looking forward to the show. Not looking forward to the weather too much, but it's going to be an amazing show. We have our own hospitality thing. I get to see a lot of the people we work with in the industry and get to go to the actual show floor. And this year we're doing something actually kind of new for us. We're going to attempt to live stream at each of our booth interviews. So what we typically do is I have two people on my team, Courtney Sanders and Heather Robinson. Quick shout out to them. And what happens is we go around with our professional equipment. Hey, Courtney. Our professional equipment, we do booth interviews, and then we take that recording, and at a future time, we put it on a podcast or our YouTube channel. We're going to do the same thing this time, but we're going to actually try to live stream it. So if you're not going to the show and you want to kind of experience it, firsthand on the floor, if you're following us here on LinkedIn, following me or Insight Partners, or if you're connected to us on our YouTube channel, it should pop up, while we're live. Just keep the app open and you should see it. So if you're interested in that, please join us. We're looking forward to that. That should be a ton of fun if it works. And we think it's going to work. You never know with the Wi-Fi and that kind of stuff. So we'll be on site live Monday and Tuesday doing tons of booth interviews and showing you the latest and greatest in HVAC technology out there. So that is Monday the 22nd. The next Monday coming up here at the time of this recording, and then Tuesday, the 23rd, we will not be there on Wednesday. We'll be flying back home. So, okay. So on that topic, I got my new ASHRAE journal. I just got it in the mail yesterday, or maybe it was today. I think it was yesterday. And inside here, there's a trends report, 2024 trend report done by the AHR Expo folks. And I'll read a little bit of this to you. I thought some of it was kind of interesting. And I like to stay up on the trends as far as, when we're doing marketing and posting and stuff like that. But I also, from my HVAC experience, I'd like to know what's going on as well. So here's a little bit I'll read from here, and then I'll talk about the trends. So it says, in anticipation of the 2024 AHR Expo, AHR Expo released its 2024 trend report, where they asked associations, manufacturers, engineers, and contractors, and thought leaders to sound off on the most impactful issues facing the HVAC and our industries. And there's a quote: as the urgency of building decarbonization and the impact of climate change continue to drive change, the HVAC and our industry stands at the forefront of efforts to develop efficient, sustainable built environments. That was a quote by ASHRAE President Ginger Scoggins, who said that in the report. So, 100%, right? If we're looking at these green initiatives and trying to decarb or whatever the initiative is, Obviously, we're going to be a big player in that because we use so much of we have such a footprint on the energy usage of all these buildings. So here's some of the trends. I'll read a little bit here. I'll give you kind of my take as to what I'm seeing. So the trend number one is regulations remain a driving force towards a cleaner future. And of course, decarbonization is all in the news. If you don't know what that is, at least for the HVAC industry that we're involved in, it involves going from gas burning products like a gas driven boiler, a gas heater, etc., to electric. Okay, electrification is the other word that you hear that goes along with decarbonization. So removing components of the system, so moving, equipment, boilers that are gas driven or a gas heater with something that's electric. Typically, the replacement for that is a heat pump. We've done a ton of, podcasts and discussions on that. There's stuff to be aware of. Be real careful when you're just changing out a gas burner for a heat pump driven product because the electric load is different because of various reasons. So just be careful with that. So the other thing under the driving force for a cleaner technology is, the global refrigerant transition. So if you're not aware of the refrigerant transition, so there's a 410A phase down, which is really a movement towards quote unquote low GWP refrigerants. Okay. So GWP is the global warming potential of a refrigerant, and anything over 700 is getting phased down. Okay. 410A, our 410A, one of the most popular refrigerants used in commercial HVAC, it falls in that category because I think it's got like a 2022 GWP number, and it has to be below 700 within the timeline set forth by the EPA. And I'll go over those real quick if you're not familiar. So what's going on is as of January 1 next year, so it'll be 2025, you cannot ship equipment with a GWP refrigerant over 700. So that is for all equipment except for VRF. VRF, the date is January 1, 2026. Okay, unless something's changed, I believe those are the dates. They're pretty much set in stone. So keep that in mind if you're specifying a job. If you're a sales guy and you're ordering equipment, make sure you pay attention to that because the viable replacements, which are R454B and R32, are not direct drop-ins for 410A. Okay, they are different refrigerants. They have different safety requirements. They're A2Ls, which means they're slightly flammable, or the correct term is low. They fall into the low flammability category. They're not non-flammable. They're low flammability. So anyway, so that's a little bit about the A2Ls and the refrigerant transition. So the other trend here is talking about the built environment is evolving. And this is something actually I'm looking forward to learning more about on the show. It's talking about IoT, AI, and controls. Now, I don't think we're anywhere near using AI to control buildings. Maybe we are. I don't know. I'll learn more when we get there. I've got a lot of experience using some AI features in our marketing when we do our videos and our scripts and stuff like that. But anyway, that's probably on the horizon, I'm sure. IoT, by the way, if you hear that acronym, it means the Internet of Things, from the best I can look up online. I didn't know that. I had to look that up. I was like, what is this IoT controls? So the other thing that falls under there is data analytics. There's this big trend towards gathering more data of a building and then doing something with it, right? The data is useless if someone's not monitoring it and making decisions, or they have a program that's looking at the data and says, okay, the static pressure is increasing over here for some reason. It might be time to change the filter, just some minor thing. Or, we're having trouble maintaining the head pressure on this chiller. Maybe we ought to go out there and look at whatever, condenser fan, maybe it's dirty or something like that. So there's a driving force for that. The other trend it talks about here is the supply chain trend. Now it says supply chain has rebounded to a stable health. Okay, I'd say a stable health is it's a relative term. It's definitely not where it was, but it's definitely better than it was a year ago. So I totally agree with that. It's on the mend, but it's still a little bit of a challenge. It talks about how A2Ls will, the transition to A2L refrigerants or away from 410A is going to kind of be a little bit of a disruptor in that as well. And just so you know, like most manufacturers, you can get selections on equipment with A2L refrigerants, the replacements for 410A. So if you're specifying a job, kind of think about that. Talk to your rep. Is this job going to ship for the end of the year? If you're just starting it, probably not, right? It might be shipping Q1 or Q2 next year. If you specify it on a Fortune machine after Q1 of next year, if it's not VRF, you're going to get a submittal for a different machine. It's going to be pretty similar, but they will be different in terms of the maybe slightly on the electrical, but definitely on the components. Okay, so the next trend it talks about is workforce and training. Now, so we're at Insight Partners and Hobbs here. We're big on giving back and training, as much as we can. Our podcast and our YouTube channel, both, they're totally free. We provide that at no charge. We use that to kind of build brand, build a relationship, and help to, empower and educate. That's our tagline, to empower and educate the HVAC community, because that's what we're trying to do with these two channels. So, it talks about the need for more training, especially in the fact that things are getting way more technical than they used to be. I know I've been around for a few years now, and you got to know what you're doing today when you work on this equipment. And there's almost like the old school refrigerant training that's kind of dying out, and then the complexity is increasing. So it's kind of like a double whammy, if you ask me, in my opinion. So we're definitely in need in this industry for some more focus on training. Okay. There's some trends in product adoption with heat pumps. Okay. And that falls in line with the decarbonization and electrification. So a lot of people are going from gas heat to heat pump heat. They're considering going from a gas boiler to a heat pump boiler. And, so that's a big trend. There's going to be tons of that at the show, I'm sure. We'll do some more information. We've got some videos on that on our YouTube channel as well. Let's see. And then trend growth and meeting demand, expansion growth and meeting demand, So managing multiple areas of growth, educating first the workforce and second the end user. That makes perfect sense, because we really can't educate the end user if we're not educating, the workforce first. So anyway, I thought this was an interesting article, ASHRAE Journal, January publication. Check it out. So the next thing I was going to talk about is, I thought this was really interesting. AHR News put out an article called "Just How Long Should Your HVAC Equipment Last?" Okay. And my thoughts on that over the years have changed quite a bit. It seems like, depending on what mood I am in, I'll give you a different answer. Or what I've just experienced on a past job, I'll give you a different answer. And I could say, I'll preface this by, we all know there's not a one silver bullet answer to that, right? You can't say split systems X years and package it. It depends on the environment. It depends on the type of the equipment. It depends on maybe even the size of the equipment. It depends on how close it is to the ocean. What's the maintenance like on the equipment? If it's anything like the unit on my house, it probably ain't going to last that long, because I'm terrible about keeping up with my own AC. But, so all those things have to come into play. How much you use it, how much it gets used, how much it's on, things like that. So anyway, I'll talk about this article and I'll share. It's interesting because it takes the point of view of the owner versus the point of view of the contractor, and it compares and contrasts what, the contractor thinks versus the owner. So these surveys questions were conducted in March 2023 by Clear Seas Research, which is the research unit of BNP Media, which is the parent company of AHR News, the publisher of this article. Okay, so here's what homeowners expect their equipment to last versus contractors. I thought this was really interesting. So I'm going to consolidate a few of these categories, but basically 38% of homeowners think their equipment will last up to 15 years-ish. Paraphrasing here a little bit. And 63% of contractors think that the equipment will last up to 15 years. Okay? Interesting. 16 to 20 years, 39% of homeowners think their equipment should last between 16 and 20 years. 39%, 16 to 20, and 29% for contractors. Okay, so there's a little discrepancy there too. 21 to 25 years, 15% of homeowners expect their equipment to last that long. Only 7% of contractors think they will last that long. And 26 years or more, 8% of homeowners, expect it to last that long, and only 1% of contractors. So that was an interesting article. I actually did a post on this and asked, everybody's opinion. It was all over the place. I would say majority of them were in the 10 to 20 years for packaged or split system products. My blanket answer is 15 years if it's well taken care of. And I know it could last longer than that, and it could last shorter than that if it's on the ocean. But I thought this was interesting nonetheless, because it kind of showed the perspective of the homeowner versus the contractor. So, okay, the third thing I was going to talk about is this problem behind me. So it's so funny. Like the more I do this, the more I get online and try to educate, and we do this as a company, as Insight Partners and Hobbs, the more I realize how little I know about something. Things that I think are a no-brainer and an easy topic. So I pose this very simple question. What does it take? How many BTUs does it take to go from 12 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit at 5,000 CFM? So 5,000 CFM for 12 degrees to 80 degrees. So I posted that yesterday, and I started getting a bunch of answers, and I noticed there was basically consistently 3 different values, which are shown right here. 367,200, 368,900, 374. So they're all very close. But I was like, why are these? I'm getting 3, but they're all, there's multiples of each of them, which seemed odd to me. And I went back and looked at it, and I realized that everybody was using a different, what do we call it? A convenience factor. So the sensible heat equation you can see over there is QS equals 1.08 times CFM times delta T, right? So the 1.08 is what is causing the different answers, because some people use 1.08. I historically have been in the industry using 1.085. A year ago, one of my friends, Chris Adams, and I were talking. We're like, we should use 1.1. Everybody's using that now. So I started using 1.1. And it looks like the majority, I would say 80% of the people who commented, thank you, by the way, for commenting and engaging. It's very helpful. Use the 1.08 convenience factor. Okay. So I thought that was interesting. So I'm probably going to switch to 1.08 just so I could be, I don't get a bunch of comments like, oh, it should be 1.885. It should be 1.1. So what that is, by the way, and this kind of led me down the rabbit hole just to make sure I could remind myself and remind everybody of actually what that convenience factor. I heard that term for the first time yesterday, a convenience factor it's called. So it's made up of a couple different components. One is the density of air, which is P, and the specific heat of air, and it's air, not hair, times 60 minutes per hour, okay? So density times specific heat times 60. Now, the 1.08 comes from doing that at standard conditions, okay? Standard conditions are sea level, 70 degrees dry air, which equals 0.075 pounds per feet cubed on the density, and that's at standard conditions, which is, again, is 70 degrees, 29.92 inches of mercury at dry air, okay, at sea level. That's the word I was looking for. The specific heat is 0.24 BTUs at standard air conditions. So if you're anything other than those standard air conditions, technically this equation is not, or that multiplier 1.08 is not accurate. Now, I'll preface the rest of this discussion in that in 90% of what I do, and I'm sure most people listening, that's not a problem, right? I'm close to sea level. I think we're 1,800, maybe 2,000 feet here. And the temperature is not very close to 70. It wasn't close to 70 yesterday. It was 12 degrees, but it's not far enough off to cause a stink. If I was calculating the BTUs of a heater for this particular example, I would have no problem using 1.08. However, if you're at a high elevation, if you're in Breckenridge, 12,000 feet-ish, be very careful, because that will definitely change the density of air, okay? Or if you're at a very extreme high temperature or very low dew point, you're trying to achieve. If you're doing like a lithium-ion battery and you're at minus 40 dew point, or if you're calculating some kind of airflow with flue gas or something that's extremely hot, be very careful with using that. I keep forgetting the name, a convenience factor. I never heard that term before, but maybe I've just missed it over the years. So be careful with that. I thought it was a great lesson in, I posted something. I thought it would be as simple. I'd come in here, record the recording, and I was like, man, I'm going to have to do some digging on this. But, as always, the engagement from the community has been great. And we tend, I think it's good. I think it's good for everybody when we post this content. Everybody kind of throws in their 2 cents, and we analyze it, and then we come back with a summary of what we learned. And I think it's very helpful to everybody to help rise up the HVAC community, which is really what we're all about here. And cool. Okay, so that's all I had today. Thank you so much for watching the Engineers HVAC podcast. You can check out our YouTube channel, HVAC-TV. Again, our tagline is to educate and empower the HVAC community. Brought to you by Insight Partners and Hobbs and Associates. And thank you so much for watching. We greatly appreciate it.